In Chicago, you know that all sports rock. The Bears, Hawks, Bulls, Cubs and Sox. Pick your favorite, you can choose. As long as the Packers lose. For everything you need to know, it's Bill Swerski Sports Talk Chicago. Bill Swerski Sports Talk Chicago.
Hey everybody, welcome to another edition of Bill Swerski Sports Talk Chicago. This is your hosts, Alex and Sean. On this episode, we've got a very special guest to talk about the Chicago Sky. We're going to be talking about the first appearance of Caleb Williams in a Bears jersey, talking some Cubs, Sox, and the NBA and NHL draft lotteries. But first, I'd like to thank our sponsor, the Rockford Ice Hogs. If you're not familiar with the Rockford Ice Hogs, they're the AHL minor league affiliate of the Chicago Blackhawks. What does that mean for you? You get to see the stars of tomorrow today at family-friendly, affordable prices. So make sure on this Mother's Day, you head on over to icehogs.com, get your mom a hat, shirt, jersey, tickets, and more. Tell them Swerski Sports sent you. Alex, my friend, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. We had a good Mother's Day here at the Pat House. And, once again, for the millionth time, my blood pressure is coming back down to normal after enduring another close Cubs victory. So that's a daily occurrence. But yeah, other than that, can't complain really. And, I'm also very, very happy that we're finally seeing Caleb Williams in a Bear uniform. So we'll get to all that later. But that was really exciting this week. Just saying.
Yeah, it's a lot of exciting stuff. You know, it's funny for only one sport having real games in our town. It's a lot of exciting stuff.
Yeah, for sure.
So, Alex, we have a special guest today. Would you like to introduce them?
Yes, we do. And I would like to welcome on the show my longtime buddy, Eric Nemchock. He is a longtime Sky season ticket holder and a contributor for Swish Appeal. So Eric is going to talk to us about the upcoming Chicago Sky season. We know there's a lot of excitement in this town and really around sports fandom for women's basketball, which is great to see. So Eric, welcome to the show for the first time.
Thank you so much, Alex and Sean. I really appreciate it. Alex, a quick tip for your blood pressure. If you root for the White Sox, I don't think, like I do, you don't have to really care about your blood pressure because they're already 12 games out of first place. They're not looking too good. So if you go into every day with an expected loss, then you just get pleasantly surprised when they win. So pro tip
with the White Sox, you don't have to worry about your blood pressure, but you got to worry about your blood sugar with the campfire milkshake.
Yes, that is the one thing they have going for them. They have that campfire milkshake, which I'm pretty sure is more expensive than tickets to the games now. If it's not, it will be soon. So
to be fair, I heard that that folks from the Cubs organization have been doing recon missions and going to there. And so
is that right?
I feel like either later this season or definitely next season, the Cubs will have some sort of, some I guess equivalent of a campfire.
The holy cow shake.
That is so funny.
What is it, like plankton in the Krabby Patty formula?
Yeah. So just what I need is getting sugared up and sitting in the bleachers.
Yeah, no kidding on a hot day. But that is funny because I could totally see just one homestand. All of a sudden, the Cubs tweet out, "Hey, here's the holy cow milkshake," and be like, "Huh, wonder where that idea came from."
The six people that are going to the White Sox games, is you see them taking a picture and be like, "Is that Jed wearing a fake mustache?"
Yeah, right.
He's got a shirt on that says "Not Jed Hoyer."
Guy looks familiar. I can't put my finger on it. But the shirt clearly says he's not Jed Hoyer, so why would I be suspicious of that?
Clearly, I must believe the shirt. Why would the shirt lie to me?
Oh,
if
man.
You read it on the internet, it must be true.
Exactly. Well, Eric, so our Chicago Sky. First of all, how long have you been a season ticket holder now? It's been over a decade, right?
Yes, it has been over a decade. I jumped on in mid 2012 when I went to a game with my mom, and honestly, the experience was incredible. There's an accessibility about the WNBA that I was not used to experiencing because I'd be going to Bulls games and White Sox games and stuff like that, where you're basically just a number when you go to watch a game and then you leave. But this guy it was totally different for me. Got to first of all, the tickets were dirt cheap, but
Yep.
also a couple of the players came out to sign autographs afterwards. And that was totally shocking to me because if this was the NBA, that would not be happening. They said, yeah, they do this after every game. I was like, whoa, really? Like, that's pretty cool. So they cut us a deal to come to the rest of the games for the rest of the season. And basically the rest was history. As a season ticket holder, we do get frequent interactions with the players. We get all sorts of other perks, maybe not so much anymore, but we get like discounted tickets, discounted merchandise. Some of us season ticket holders get buffet food. I know, Alex, you've been to a couple of games with me.
Yes. Yes.
They call it the Courtside Club. There's some pretty good food there before the game. So yeah, the experience in general is awesome, and it's the reason why I've stayed on board for now. It's gonna be my 12th season.
Yeah, that's crazy how time goes by. So, with the growing popularity of women's basketball, and we're on pace to have, like the most popular WNBA season ever with Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese here in Chicago. There's a lot of hype about it. How do you see like this all like do you think that as we go on, it becomes more popular, the demand for tickets is higher, the television ratings are higher? I mean, how is this all going to change, like for you as a season ticket holder? Do you think that, there's going to be a big shift in how the presentation of the games are, the accessibility to the players, the type of media that you see at the game? Like, how do you think this is shifting with this growing popularity of the game?
That's a good question, and I think you are already seeing this. I believe the security at Wintrust Arena is going to be a little tighter than it has been previously. The media is basically sports media is going to have no choice but to buy in, because they're going to be looking at these numbers, they're going to be looking at these television deals, and they're going to say, well, we want a piece of this pie. Unfortunately, local coverage of the Sky has been severely lacking ever since I kind of have been familiar with the league. The Sun-Times and the Tribune, your two major newspapers in Chicago, they have been stepping up their game recently. I know a couple of beat writers for the Sky for those newspapers, and they are doing a great job. But there just isn't that massive landscape that you see for the other professional sports leagues around America. But again, I think that's going to change now.
I think so too.
The demand is going to call for it. Basically, like you said, Caitlin Clark, we have never really seen anything like this in terms of demand, in terms of coverage, in terms of social media presence for a lot of these players. It's not just Clark, it's Reese, it's all these other players that are coming in who already have these large followings, thanks in part to the rise of women's college basketball. So it's going to kind of snowball here. And I know, Alex, you and I were talking dinner the other night about what resale tickets are looking like for Sky games. It's haven't seen anything like this before. I will say that the preseason game, the Sky had two preseason games this year. They went 1-1, but the one game was for season ticket members only. Why? I don't know. But it was interesting. The league actually got, I don't want to say the popular term is bullied. They weren't obviously bullied, but there was such an outrage over these preseason games not being shown. And WNBA preseason games were never really shown in the past. They just weren't.
Right.
League Pass is one of the greatest price to content ratios, in my opinion, because I believe it's now at like $35-$36 for the entire season, which you compare that to what is it? MLB TV and NBA League Pass, and that just blows that out of the water in terms of value. But they just weren't televised previously.
Right.
And us longtime fans just had to sit there and watch our magical updating box scores and use our imaginations to kind of figure out what was going on the court. That's not happening anymore because these new fans, this huge influx of new fans for the WNBA, are demanding, and for good reason, that these games are being shown, because there is always this missed opportunity. These college teams have huge followings. College basketball is a huge thing, whether it's men or women. And there's always been this kind of disconnect between college basketball and the WNBA. I can't explain why. I'm sure there are a certain number of factors there, but there's always been kind of this struggle to follow up on player popularity moving from women's college ball to the WNBA. lack of visibility is one of them for sure. You want to see your superstars make their professional debuts under any circumstances, and the fact that you can't do that when they're playing like a couple states away is very frustrating.
Right.
It's not equitable. You can watch NBA preseason games, you can watch NBA summer league games, you can watch NBA training camp, you can do all this stuff, but the WNBA, the accessibility just hasn't been there from a television perspective. But going back to what I was going to say originally, this preseason game, the Sky and the Liberty, last Tuesday, I think it was, they actually had to hustle to put together a stream like at the last minute because they knew that so many people wanted to see Angel Reese's Chicago debut.
Wow.
And it was only for season ticket holders, this game attendance. But I want to say there was about maybe a little under 2,000 people there, which I had never seen that before for season ticket holders. Like, I'm used to the season ticket holder group being a very intimate group, maybe not a ton of people like that. But when I got there, I was shocked. Like, it was general admission only. All the great seats were already taken. There was an energy there that almost felt like a playoff game. It's just totally changed. So to answer your question, yes, things are changing very quickly, and I don't think this is something that you can just put back into a bottle. The WNBA needs to either expand quickly or fail, honestly, quite frankly. And I think they are realizing that, like, hey, it can't be business as usual anymore because the demand is just it's too prevalent right now.
Yeah, and I was just going to ask too, like, season ticket holder wise, did that grow? Like the number of season ticket holders? That
Big
sounds
time.
like it did.
Big
Wow.
time, yeah. I know, and this isn't just for the Sky or the Fever. I believe Atlanta sold out their season ticket plans. Dallas sold out their season ticket plans. I want to say Las Vegas probably did. I don't quote me on that, but I'm pretty sure they did. And I talking my Sky ticket rep, he said, like, hey, we're having a hard time over here. This is the hardest we've ever had to work. Do your jobs. This is the hardest you've ever had to work to basically secure all these new accounts. But like you said, that's a good thing.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, it was like almost a perfect storm with the WNBA because you had the Caitlin Clark hype, coupled with just a ton of really good teams in the women's NCAA tournament,
For sure.
coupled with the men's tournament was, I mean, as far
Subpar.
I mean, exciting, but as compared to historically the tournament, pretty lackluster and not a lot of big names. It was almost like the perfect storm for the WNBA to sort of piggyback off of this, and hopefully that happens.
And the thing about that is, you're right, 100%. You're right. I think I'm gonna be honest. I don't follow men's college basketball too closely. There are several reasons. First of all, it's just a lot to follow both the women's and men's college seasons at the same time. I think one, I don't know if you could call it an advantage. In my eye, it's an advantage. You've got the players staying for more than one season. All the big names. Whereas the NBA, men's college basketball, it's one and done, and then you're going to the NBA. For the women's basketball, you get these storylines that are building throughout a player's career. Caitlin Clark's first season was being played right at the start of the pandemic. I usually go to the women's Big Ten tournament every year it's usually held in Indianapolis. The past couple seasons it was in Minnesota, but I remember sitting 200 level with my mask and behind these big plastic screens, which in retrospect is kind of funny because that wouldn't have stopped any sort of disease, but I digress. Watching Iowa play, and I'm like, this girl is going to sell tickets. Like, this is the type of player who people are going to want to see play. But that was when she was just a freshman, But because she was just a freshman, the storyline of Caitlin Clark was able to build and build and build throughout the years. She was able to get that scoring title. She was able to get all these endorsements. She was able to capitalize on the new NIL deals. And you're going to see that with all sorts of different players. You have players making transfers with the transfer portal, like the transfer. You ask any women's college basketball fan about the transfer portal, they will go on a big rant because that's a very big deal. Parity in women's college basketball is increasing every season. The talent level is increasing every season. And like I said, it's not just one and done for these players. Although I do think that should be an option. Like if you're pro material when you're 19 years old, you're pro material, like go get your money. But the fact of the matter is women's college basketball fans are able to watch these players for more than one season in a row. And that only builds things up when they get to the tournament, because then you're going to have these records falling. You're going to have these individual rivalries forming. You're going to have these rematches forming. And everyone wanted to see LSU play Iowa in the NCAA tournament this past year because it was a rematch of last year's national champ or the previous national championship game. So those are things you just don't really get in the men's game.
No, that's all very true. And, you know, I remember too, kind of looking back at the men's tournament, and, you know, everybody makes their brackets, and yeah, everybody has, you know, the upsets this year, they all happen, but the champion, we all saw it coming, and it was one of those things where it's like, yeah, we all know who was going to win, but like you said, I think the biggest thing that you just said is like there was no player storyline to follow. And, you know, I'll never forget years back when, you know, Duke was obviously a powerhouse and you had Grayson Allen and, you know, he was kind of the villain, but you followed that. It was a player that you followed for one reason or another. And, you know, this year with the men, you really didn't have that. I mean, frankly, I think the biggest storyline, you know, obviously being an Illinois fan, them going far in the tournament was good to watch and something to talk about. But I felt like Kentucky choking early was probably one of the biggest talked about uh, storylines of the men's tournament. And, you know, that was really just about a disappointing team. It wasn't really a player, like you said, where like, you know, the whole world wanted to see that Reese Clark rematch, and we got it. And you can kind of look back now and say, hey, they both matched up and they both, you know, got the better end back-to-back years. You know, Reese won last year and Clark won this year. So that is really cool to follow. And I really hope that that's a thing in the WNBA where, you know, Reese versus Clark is continued, you know, a continued storyline. You see that being a thing? Because I feel like it will be.
I don't see how it can't be a thing. The fact of the matter is these women are competitors. Mm-hmm. And the Sky in particular, I think this year's team, I know you want to talk about this year's team. I'm just going to say it right now. This is going to be a chippy team. A lot of very competitive players, a lot of players who play with a chip on their shoulder, and a lot of players who are going to be doing a lot of talking on the court. And I think I might leave it at that. But and that's another thing that it carries over. It's not just in college, but you got to think about AAU, Team USA, the Team USA pipeline. These women know each other. Like they're not meeting in the NCAA tournament for the very first time. And I think one thing that maybe as a society we've kind of been lagging behind on is that female athletes are allowed to talk their you know what too. You know, they don't need to be dainty. They don't need to be restrained. Like you watch, they get after it. And as somebody who sits courtside for the past 7, 8 seasons in the WNBA, it's every bit as physical as the men's game, for 100% for sure. So and that's something that you can really see when you're up close like that. It's hard to kind of appreciate that on TV, but yeah, going back to your original point, I think that rivalry will continue. And there are plenty of other player rivalries in the WNBA too that make it a fun product to watch. But yes, I agree with you.
I have Sean, what questions for you? Go ahead, Sean. Yeah. So one is, you know, I'm not the biggest follower of the WNBA, but seeing the players that got drafted this year that I am familiar with, it seems like the Sky had a really good draft, and they addressed a big need in having a big rebounder and added 2 really good talents. Like, how do you stack up the Sky's draft to some of the other teams' draft picks and the way the roster is going to look this year?
Well, there are a few things when you're talking about the WNBA draft that need to be considered. The first thing is that there aren't an awful lot of roster spots in the WNBA. Teams can carry either 11 or 12 players. There is a hard salary cap. Teams cannot go over the salary cap, and what they do, they cannot go over. Other teams, other sports that have salary caps, you know, there's softened cap, you can go over, you can pay the luxury tax. There's no such thing in the WNBA. Unfortunately, I think what you've been seeing over the past few seasons is that the league is getting more talent than it can accommodate, or faster than it can accommodate it. So a lot of these teams are doing what we call stashing. So they're drafting players who maybe either playing internationally or even interestingly may have suffered season-ending injuries and will need to take the summer to recover. So that way they don't need to roster them right away, but they can still own their rights down the line. So they can still say, yeah, we drafted this player, but we don't need to have them compete in our camp right away. So that's one interesting aspect of it. The other thing is it's only a 12-team league. So you have some teams who are absolutely going for it, trying to win now. Other teams, maybe not so much because it's simply just not realistic for them. The Sky, I think, did a good job of both drafting for need and for the future. If you're in a position, I'm generally not a fan of drafting for need in the WNBA. I'm just not. I think you should just get the best player available. At 3, it was interesting, though, because I think there could have been an argument that Camila Cardoso was not the best player available, but long term, I can see the vision. Because if you couple her with Angel Reese, like you said there, Sean, you've got 2 excellent rebounding players. Like that's one thing the Sky are going to do for sure this season is rebound the heck out of the basketball. You've also got, you're thinking ahead for the future. So the Sky only have a few players. I believe only, besides their draftees, I believe there are only 2 players that are under contract for next season. So this is very much going to be a transitional season for the Sky. I'm not going to use the R word, rebuild, because someone will hear this and get very mad at me, but yeah, they're rebuilding. So it may not make sense right away. And I think there are going to be some clunky fits on the court. But if you're thinking about for the future, there are a lot of players on this team now that may or may not be on the team next year. So they're very much building for the future, while at the same time, it's not like Reese and Cardoso are these project players either. They are going to play right away. So I think you hit the nail on the head there, Sean. You did a good job of saying, yeah, I mean, these are players who are going to, first of all, they're bringing in a massive following. I don't want to discount that. And for a team that is kind of lagging behind the rest of the WNBA or most of the rest of the WNBA in terms of fan attention, yes, that absolutely matters. I'm not going to act like it doesn't, but it's going to give them an infrastructure moving forward, at least because it's a power forward and a center. So Reese power forward, Cardoso center. You're going to have ideally a defensive infrastructure set for the next few years. You're going to have a shot blocker and massive paint presence in Cardoso, and a really energetic player who just gets after it on the boards and is a spiritual and emotional leader for your team in Angel Reese.
And you sort of touched on one of my follow-up questions is with the smaller roster size, with the influx of talent both this year and probably next year as well. And then, I'm sure this is not slowing down at all. Some of the veteran players that are very talented, are they concerned about, the longevity of their careers? And, does this lead to expansion of the league?
Yes, it leads to expansion. They actually just announced. So Golden State is getting a team next year. And they just announced a few days ago that, actually it might not be official yet, but we're pretty sure that Toronto is getting a team in 2026.
Yep.
So that's 2 more teams. That's up to 24 more roster spots. That's a big deal. All right. The other thing is the collective bargaining agreement is going to expire, I think, after 2026, or they can opt out after 2026 or something like that. Whether or not I'm correct on the date, it's going to change everything because that's what the CBA does. Like they're going to have to go back and rewrite everything. So yes, it is going to create a lot more opportunities, but the problem is, it's not the star players that are going to be worried, because as under this collective bargaining agreement, the CBA, they can get up to, it's over $200,000 is the maximum contract. I don't have the number in front of me. Whereas the veteran minimum depends on how long the player has been in the league, but I think it's around $70,000. It's not the star players they're going to get squeezed out. It's the veterans who can command more money, but are going to be kind of squeezed out because teams want to stay under the salary cap and want to get maybe a 12th player instead of stick with 11 players. So they're going to get younger. In fact, the Sky kind of did some salary cap gymnastics back in 2021 when they won the championship. Like it was kind of funny, actually. They were making a transaction like every week because they had to stay under the salary cap retroactively. And they were cutting and bringing back the same player like 4 or 5 different times. It was actually kind of awkward, but they're in this place where I'm going to use the NBA as a comparison. You've got guys sitting on the end of the bench who are very well off and they just don't play.
Yep.
That's not the case in the WNBA. Other things to consider with the limited roster size, 11 or 12 player roster. How are you running practices if you've got, say, 3 injuries? You can't even play 5-on-5. So then you have to take your practice squad play. You have to take your practice squad people, who are, by the way, not WNBA players. So it just creates a whole mess of that sort of thing. But going back to your original question, a lot of veteran players are kind of getting squeezed out year after year after year because teams are trying to find a way to both afford their best players by paying them the maximum amount of money and roster their young players because they don't want to have to draft them and say, oh, just kidding, we can't afford this player we just drafted, see you later, because that's just an awful look. So I think that's going to be a major point of contention in the next CBA negotiations for sure.
Are those negotiations going to get messy, do you think? How do you think that's going to go down?
They're going to get very messy. I mean, they're always messy. The main issue this year is going to be, or this time around is going to be travel. And in my opinion, it's going to be travel.
Yes.
They actually just announced that they will be chartering flights this season for the first time. And that's a bit of a misnomer because they were in special situations. My dog is barking. I apologize. In special situations, last year they were chartering flights, but the WNBA mostly has been commercial flight for its entire existence. And that's been an issue. You know, we talk about security for the players is just not there. Countless number of times when a team's flight would get delayed, or, you know, they would come in, you know, the morning of a game, the game would be at 7 p.m. They'd get there at like 4 a.m. or something ridiculous like that. It's just not good for a professional league to be doing that.
No, not at all.
And there have been several reasons why that hasn't happened, why it's been that way. But charter flights are one thing I think the players are going to fight very hard for. And then benefits, things like that. A large discussion has been had about players who have had children in the middle of the season or during the off season. They claim they're not getting good enough benefits. I think that's got to be priority number 1A, to make sure your mothers are being taken care of. Absolutely. So those are the main 2 issues I think are going to happen. But again, the salary cap, I don't think this league can continue with a hard salary cap either. If you soften the cap and you allow teams to bring in injury replacements more easily, if you allow teams to roster, maybe increase the roster size to 13, perhaps, or conversely, eliminate the 3rd round of the draft. It is pretty rare that you see 3rd round draft picks make teams. You see them get drafted, they're in training camp, but they have like no chance because training camp rosters sizes are 18 players. They got to get cut down to 12 or 11 by opening day. You've got several people there who just have no chance because they're competing against either veterans who have already earned their spot on the team or higher profile rookies who the teams don't want to cut because they just look bad no matter how well the other people play. So it's going to be pretty messy. I agree. I don't think there's going to be like a lockout or anything like that, but there are going to be a lot of key issues on the table that are going to set the stage moving forward, not just for the WNBA, but for the respect that women's sports is going to garner in the future.
Yeah, I think it's going to probably be really interesting too, because at the time when the CBA is going to be due, you have a newfound interest in the league, and which is going to bring more people and more sponsors, trying to gauge at what level is this going to maintain, and is it going to continue to grow? Is it going to, sort of stay flat, and try to prognosticate, because the players obviously will want a bigger slice of the pie if more money's infused, and the teams will probably try to take a really conservative approach to that.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, no arguments there. It's going to be interesting. And also remember, they're going to have 2 more teams. And that's going to change everything too. So it's going to be interesting, but I don't want to think about that right now. That's a couple of years down the road. I'm just trying to enjoy my team right now. But Yes, it's like I said off air, things are changing very, very quickly. And again, this isn't something you're not going to be able to put the genie back in the bottle this time. This is growth that absolutely must be capitalized on, or else things are going to get pretty hairy.
Um, so last year, the Sky, they were one of the bottom teams as far as the standings go, but not a terrible record. Uh, you know, where do you sort of see them, I guess, go forward this year? And you talked about them being a little bit of a rebuild, but um, do you think they take a step backwards to take a step forwards, or do you think they're going to, um, sort of rebuild on the fly?
It's a good question. Well, last year was kind of a weird year. The Sky were kind of stuck in between a rock and a hard place because they had lost so much from the 2022 team. They had lost so many great players, and they chose not to rebuild. They chose to I'm just going to say they mortgaged their future to stay competitive for 2023. That included trading a lot of draft picks in order to invest a lot of money in second and third tier free agents. And while they were competitive-ish, I mean, you said it, they were the final playoff seed. They got rolled by the Las Vegas Aces in the first round as expected. And then they went into the 2024 offseason and they were forced to trade their star player, Kalia Copper. They had several other free agents leave, which is something Chicago Sky fans are no stranger to. So I think, that kind of forced their hand in terms of rebuilding. So you said, do they take a step back in order to take a step forward? Maybe. I'm not sure. I think just on paper, this team is maybe not a playoff caliber team. I could see them sneaking into the playoffs again, but it becomes a matter of, so you've got 12 teams in the WNBA, 8 of them make the playoffs. So which of the teams in the league are for sure going to be worse than the Sky? I think Washington will be worse. I mean, I realize this is a very pessimistic way of looking at it, but it's easier to determine 4 teams than 8 teams. So I'm just going to say Washington's going to be worse. I think LA could be worse. After that, I'm not so sure because Indiana definitely got better. Teams like New York, Vegas, Connecticut, Dallas, forget about it. They're in. Like, there's not much of a question about that. So then who's going to be fighting for those last few playoff seats? And also, who has the incentive to miss the playoffs? I'm not going to use the T word because teams in the WNBA don't like using that, but there are some teams that I think will be trying harder to win games than other teams this season. The Sky are in a weird spot again, though, because they actually, as part of that trade that mortgaged their future, as I said, they traded. They've got the Dallas Wings have swap rights on their first round pick for 2025. So that means if the Dallas Wings finish with a better record than the Chicago Sky this summer, they are going to swap first round picks. So the Sky can't really T-word. Like they can't they can't just say, yeah, okay, we're rebuilding. We don't care if we make the playoffs or not. Like if they miss the playoffs, then they're giving the potential for a very high draft pick to somebody else. So you might as well go for it, I don't think as this roster currently stands, I mentioned that not many players are under contract for next season. So they're kind of in a transitional period. I'm going to take that a step further. The roster as it's currently built, I don't think makes a ton of sense because for as exciting as some of these players are, and I'm very much looking forward to watching Cardoso and Reese and the rest of this team play. I'm concerned about how they're going to fit on the court because you've got at least 4 of your 5 bigs are mostly paint bound, or they like to operate around the hoop. They don't have much of an offensive game outside of the painted area. And when in today's basketball, it's difficult to field good lineups when you have 2 bigs that are playing inside of the paint. You're going to be a great rebounding team. I think they're going to be a great rebounding team, have a potential to be a good defensive team as well. But offensively, they're going to be very, very much leaning on their guards. They've got some guards who can score, for sure. But when you stack this roster up against other rosters, I'm not sure where offensively they're creating many advantages. Again, it's a transitional period. I think they're going to have their work cut out for them. I am going to say that I think they've got some building blocks though. I hate to use the armchair psychologist terminology, but the vibes are going to be so much better this year last year they were kind of, like I said, stuck between a rock and a hard place where it was okay. You're decent, but you're probably not going to win a championship. But you can't really afford to miss the playoffs either. Oh, and guess what? Your head coach bounced in the middle of the season to go work in the NBA. That those are tough things to work through. And now they've kind of overhauled things again, but they've just been infused with all this new energy and optimism and excitement. I think we're going to see a team that plays really, really hard, that plays for each other, and generally has a very exciting brand of basketball. So I guess that's a roundabout way of saying expectations aren't high, but if I'm proven wrong, I won't be upset.
So, let's say, and this might be a hard question to answer, but if you had to put a percentage on the Sky making the playoffs, what would you put it at?
I don't know. What does FanDuel have? What are the odds looking at? Gosh, I don't know. Maybe I wasn't considering that one, Alex. 30, 30 to 35%. Again, I'm not particularly optimistic about that. I don't think they're going to be the worst team. All right. I don't want to sound like I'm extremely pessimistic about this. I'm just not exactly sure. Let's frame it uncertainty. All right. I'm not sure how all these pieces are going to fit together. They've got a first year head coach. There are a lot of other teams they're going to be going up against that already have their stuff together. Okay. Can I weasel my way out of that one by saying I'm uncertain?
Well, yeah, of course. And, I think that the way you're framing this is how Sean and I have framed a lot of transition period Chicago sports teams in the past. I mean, we've talked all year about where the Blackhawks are. Like when the Blackhawks got Connor Bedard, you're getting a generational talent in this kid, and everybody knows that this kid is probably going to be great. And we knew going into this season that the Blackhawks were not going to win a lot of games despite that. So, I feel like you framing it the way you are, it paints a clear picture of what the Sky are going to be doing. And, to get better, sometimes you have to go through that transition period. But what I at least see with the Sky from my perspective is you have building blocks in place. You have building blocks in place that are going to bring people to the arena, and it's going to cause some stir in the Chicago sports landscape. And that, you kind of see where you have things and how you go forward from there. And I guess another quick question for you is, what can you tell us about the head coach?
So I'll answer your second question first. Teresa Weatherspoon is one of the most recognizable figures of the first wave of WNBA players. She was in the WNBA when it first got off the ground in 1997. She is one of the greatest players in WNBA history when you're talking about point guards. I believe she set the single season record for steals per game in a season. I'm not entirely sure about that, but I'm pretty sure I'm right. She's just got that dog mentality. I hate to use that term, but she's got that dog mentality. She took that on her shoulders when she was a player. And like I said, she's a very recognizable figure for basically any WNBA player because they grew up watching her play. That's the thing. The league is getting to a point now. It started in 97. We're in 2024 now. We're getting to a point where we've had several generations of players come and go now. And these players who are coming in, they've got players to idolize. They've got players who they've watched growing up. I'm sure you guys heard this. Candace Parker recently retired. That was an extremely emotional day for WNBA fans, not just WNBA fans, for WNBA players. There were so many amazing stories. And what really stood out to me about that was you had younger WNBA players posting pictures of them when they were in high school, getting their shirt signed by Candace Parker when she was a rookie. It's just like stuff like that. You're starting to see that the new generation come up and they know about these historical figures now. So Weatherspoon was one of the OGs in the league. Got her fame from playing with the New York Liberty back in the day. And then most recently, she was an assistant coach and a player development coach for the New Orleans Pelicans. But she was brought on, I believe, as part of a strategy by this guy to, like you said, put some butts in seats and also help recruit players who understand her importance and understand the significance of what she's done in the league. I'm interested to see this because we haven't seen her coach in the WNBA yet. So this is always a question. Like, does that necessarily mean that person is going to be a good coach? Not necessarily. We've seen a lot of examples of people who were great players come in and their coaching acumen just did not stack up. But I think the idea behind this hire is that Weatherspoon knows what it's like to be a player, and she's going to know how to tap into that dog in a lot of these players. You know what I mean? And I think they're also banking on the fact that she's coming from an NBA organization, not just as an assistant coach, but as a player development coach. So she's going to take this young team and she's going to know how to handle them. There's a huge difference, Alex, between coaching a veteran team that's coming off 2 straight championships like the Las Vegas Aces and coaching a team that is full of young players. This is their first year as a professional. This is their first year in Chicago. This is their first year where they may not be top dog on the team. They may not be the highest person on the totem pole anymore. You got to teach them how to play professionally. And I think the hope with Weatherspoon is that she's going to be able to not only teach them that, but also bring out that energy in them, because that's the one thing I don't think this team is going to lack. They're gonna hustle like crazy. They're gonna get after it on defense, but they need to learn how to be professionals. That's the case with all young players in the WNBA. And I think the idea with Weatherspoon is that she is going to use her experience as a player and as a player development coach to bring that out of them. And your first question, what was your first question? I'm sorry.
Well, I was just kind of it was more of a comment about, where the team was going and how we were looking at other rebuilds and, how we kind of look at a transition period.
Right.
And there's nothing wrong with understanding where you are. Like, I made the comp to the Blackhawks. Everybody knew what the Blackhawks were doing, even with drafting Connor Bedard. A lot of people didn't like it, but we remember, Sean and I talked very deeply the day they tore the Cubs down in 2021, and we knew what was kind of going on there. So, obviously sounds like there's going to be a lot of figuring out to do this season with the Chicago Sky, but you seem very, you articulate it very well. Like, we understand where we are and what we're trying to get to, but what I at least pick up from you is that the cornerstone players that we do have in place, not only going to put butts in seats, but they're going to make their presence pretty well known and, dare I say, kind of help them build an identity as we go forward.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, that's a good word for it. Identity. I think this team is going to lead the league in technical fouls. That's a prediction I'm going to throw
okay.
out there.
All right.
No, this is, like I said, it's going to be a very chippy team, very energetic team. But I wanted to provide some context to what you were saying about that, because you're partially right, but it's not necessarily the same, and I'll tell you why. The Blackhawks recently got was it number 2 pick?
This draft, yes, they did.
Okay. Like I said, the Sky may or may not have a very good draft pick next year because the Dallas Wings have swap rights, which is an extremely unfortunate position to be in as a rebuilding team, because you're like, okay, well, we kind of have to just go for it anyway, because even if we're terrible, this other team is going to swap picks with us, and that's not good. The other thing is, I need to talk about some Sky history here for a brief moment, so bear with me. The Sky have generally been seen as a WNBA team that, I want to be diplomatic here, is rarely first on any free agents shopping list. I'm not going to say nobody wants to play here, but there's always been a little bit of a disparity in off-court accommodations between the Sky and some of the rest of the WNBA.
Mm-hmm.
That has only become more and more apparent, and the disparity has only become greater and greater in recent seasons, because you've got these organizations like the Las Vegas Aces, the New York Liberty, the Phoenix Mercury, the Seattle Storm, who are investing big time money in these state-of-the-art practice facilities for their players. Not only courts to hoop on, but they've got, fitness centers, they've got massage rooms, they've got pools, and it's all for them. And the players understand they're doing this for us. My dog is barking again. I apologize. The Sky have no such facility. Okay. They practice in Deerfield in a recreation center. Granted, it's a pretty good recreation center. Okay. I wouldn't mind being a member there, But that's the problem in itself. Like if I was a resident there, I could be working out next to a Sky player. That for security reasons and for so many other reasons, that should not be. The other reason that stinks is, Alex, do you know how far Deerfield is from South Loop?
Yeah, it ain't close.
No, especially when 94 is under construction, which is all the time. Okay.
Oh,
So you
yeah,
got
true.
players living and practicing, gosh, I don't know, an hour and a half away from the stadium. That's not good. And the practice facility is, you know, it's like a country club, basically. It's like a field house. Their court is it is separate from the rest of the facilities, but again, it's the level of investment that the Sky are giving their own players versus the level of investment that other teams are giving to their players. And this is something, and think about this from the perspective of a WNBA player. When you are constantly fighting for respect, you're constantly fighting to be paid what you're worth. You're constantly fighting for positive visibility. That sort of thing. And this is something that multiple players have been citing in their preseason interviews this season. They're saying, hey, Seattle, I saw this practice facility and I was really impressed because I could see that they were investing in me as a person and as a player. And the Sky simply have not been able to keep up with that. And that's not the only reason why like they've had players requesting trades and striking out on big name free agents. But the fact of the matter is, this organization does not financially compete with most of the other organizations in the WNBA. As Chicago sports fans, I'm sure you guys can sympathize with that comment.
Of course.
And like I said, this is a 12-team league. There are not many secrets. Okay, players talk. Reputations are difficult to change. So you can say, okay, hey, guess what? We got Dwayne Wade as minority owner now. It's like, okay, so what? Am I still practicing an hour and a half from the arena? Okay, I don't care. I don't care about Dwayne Wade. Like what do you have to sell for me? The Sky simply have not been able to sell much that other teams can't. So what I think part of the solution is, and obviously the most obvious solution is build a facility in the city, use a facility in the city, pay up. Besides that, you want to build a roster. You want to build a culture that players want to join. You want to have a roster of players that other people want to play with. This guy's previous head coach, general manager, James Wade, he made a comment to media saying something along the lines of, free agents don't come to play with draft picks. Granted, that was in defense of this massive trade that they made that is the reason why they haven't really had much in the way of draft capital for the past couple seasons. But I think he did have a point there. It's easier to see a culture. It's easier to see a roster of players who enjoy playing with one another, who have built something together, and who genuinely, who built something together, like not just an on-court product, but an off-court product as well, who have billboards up there, who have people coming to see them play, who sell out the arena every night. It's tempting as a free agent player to say, okay, there must be something good going on there. I want to know more about that. Because right now, Chicago is generally not on a lot of players' radars, which is a real bummer.
It is. Big city, big town. Yeah.
Exactly. But, you can't just say, hey, summertime shy, and then everyone's going to want to come play for you. You got to have something tangible there.
Of course.
So, in my opinion, like, I'm not privy to every single move the Sky are making. I'm just a fan. I'm just a guy. But I think here what their strategy is, they are looking at the situation and being like, okay, we can't just make a state-of-the-art practice facility pop up like a mushroom overnight in the South Loop here. How are we going to build a team and build a culture that is not only respectable, but is, but is advertisable as well? And I think in drafting Camila Cardoso and Angel Reese, in hiring Teresa Weatherspoon, and in making all these on-court changes, they are hoping on, they're banking on this kind of trickling down and saying, wow, this team may not be a championship caliber team yet, but they've got something cooking. They've got something exciting going on there.
Right. They're building up. Yeah,
they're building up. that's what I think. It's more than just wins and losses here. It's not where it's like the NBA where, every team's got a $1 million practice facility and every team's got doctors and psychologists and trainers and massage therapists and the whole kit and caboodle. And they'll give them $1 billion mansions and stuff like that. It's not like that. There's not equity among the off-court there's not equity among the off-court accommodations yet in the WNBA.
It's
So
too bad the Sky can't use the Advocate Center like that the Bulls practice.
Yeah, and that's been brought up too. Here's another disadvantage: the Sky aren't co-owned by an NBA team. Although, if you're looking at who owns the Bulls and the White Sox right now, I'm not sure if that's a bad thing.
I was gonna say I don't want Jerry's grubby hands on the Chicago Sky. We don't need a third.
I kid. But if you look at a lot of the WNBA teams are co-owned. Phoenix, New York, Indiana, those all have NBA support.
The new Golden State one's going to be owned by the Warriors.
Yeah,
right?
that's going to be amazing. But the Sky just don't have that. And like Sean said, it's a shame they can't use the Advocate Center. I agree, because the Bulls aren't using it right now, right? So
and it's a nice facility.
It's a great facility. It's beautiful. That's another issue. There's a whole bunch of things that are on the table here that just aren't on the table, that aren't of concern to other sports teams and other sports fans that need to be considered here. But I think the bottom line is, once again, whoops, my audio cut out. I think the bottom line here is they are trying to establish a product that's going to get results on the court, but also be, attractive off the court as well.
It's just an FYI, the FanDuel's over under on wins for the Sky this year is 12.5.
Oh, that's kind of sad. I would go over on that. Slightly.
You heard it here first, folks. He's going over.
I'm not going to say hammer the over. I might tap it a couple times. I think they can get to 13 wins. We'll see. The 40-game season, 13-27. I think that's realistic. What I'm interested to see here is that this roster is one where I'm not going to say they're a deep team, but you're not going to have a lot of players who are DNP risks, and you're not going to have a lot of players who are playing 34 minutes a game, because WNBA games they're only 40 minutes rather than 48. Right. I think you're going to have a lot of people who are playing like between 18 and 24 minutes. And that's another thing I'm really interested to see, because they've got a lot of front court pieces. Like I said, I don't think all these players, I think not a lot of these players actually are going to be back next year. So at what point is Teresa Weatherspoon going to kind of give the keys of the car to Cardoso and Reese? I would say watch for a midseason trade, maybe. Unfortunately, with the hard salary cap, that's very difficult in the WNBA to see a midseason trade with a player getting paid a lot of money. But there, like I said, there's a lot of uncertainty here, but it's a good type of uncertainty. You know what I'm saying? Like last season, it was the vibes were off, man. The vibes were off. But this season, there's a lot to look forward to. And even if it's not great right away, it feels like the fans are going to be part of a team that is moving in the right direction.
So it's not the Bulls, is what you're trying to say.
It's basically the opposite of that. I saw they just got a robust 11th overall pick in the NBA.
Yes,
draft
they
lottery,
did.
So that was fun.
I
honestly cannot.
You got the first?
Yeah, Atlanta. Yeah, good for them.
The team that we clobbered in the play-in tournament.
That has nothing to do with it, right? But yeah, that is.
I don't care. It's still like.
it's a bit of karma maybe there. And then the Pistons got the 5th overall pick again, which I honestly kind of feel bad for them. Yeah, that's really terrible. That's not fair. But yeah, it's again, it's gonna be an exciting season. And to anyone who is listening, I don't know, you guys have a lot of listeners, right? You guys have like 20,000, maybe 25,000 listeners.
Something along those lines.
Okay, all right. So we're going to say 25,000 listeners right now. Come out to see a game. Come out to see a few games. It's a good time. Seriously, it's like I said, the energy in the preseason game was unbelievable for a preseason game. It's going to be a very outgoing team, a very fun team to follow on social media, but most importantly, a very fun team to watch play basketball.
Well, we'll certainly be watching it too. That's for sure.
Yeah. So I think if you can, or even watch them on TV, summer there's no NBA being played in the summer. So if you like basketball, you got to tune in, man. It's going to be a good time.
Well, we certainly will. And we will definitely be talking about them on this show as we go forward. And we know exactly who to go to when we need some Sky expertise. So Eric, before we let you go, I guess the one last thing that I would ask you is, what are you going to do when Caitlin Clark comes to town? Are you going to go? You going to try to make a little money off those tickets? What are you thinking?
So I would feel kind of bad if I sold my tickets because then I'd feel like I was
Missing out.
no, not missing out. Then I'd feel like I was capitalizing financially on somebody else's growth and popularity.
That's
But
fair.
on the other hand, I believe my seats right now are going for a little over $2,000 a piece on StubHub.
Ooh.
I could pay off a significant portion of my season tickets for next season for that one game. And don't think I haven't thought about the potential of me being priced out if tickets go up again, because they're probably going to raise ticket prices again. Also, the Fever played the Fever come to town twice, so I would also have the opportunity to see Caitlin Clark again later in the season. I don't know, man. We've got a few weeks in between now and then, so I'll have to see how the old finances are looking. I'll get back to you on that one.
All right. All right. Sounds good. Well, Eric, thank you so much for coming on. This was really, really great. And, we're excited that we're able to really watch and be part of the growth of women's basketball and women's sports. As somebody who was an intern in professional women's sports a few years back with the old MPF, I should say, the National Pro Fast Pitch Softball League, I see how hard those women work to get to where they are. And we can finally see a path where the women's sports are going to have the profitability to really have a more level playing field with the men. And the fact that we in Chicago are going to at least have a team that we can say, you know what, we have a future here when it comes to basketball, especially since the Bulls are such a mess, it feels good because this town loves basketball. Chicago loves basketball. And the more hype that you get a basketball team up around here, the more the city will rally around it. I mean, hey, remember when Loyola was going on that run, or when you had like Northwestern going on a run, and this year with the Illini, people love basketball in this town. So the fact that we get to see something, in the works that's exciting and fun, it means a lot to the city of Chicago. We need as many good sports storylines as we can. Isn't that right, Sean?
Oh, absolutely.
We
There's
really do.
no
And
doubt about it.
if you don't mind me jumping in one last time,
Yes.
um, a few names I want you guys to watch for that I think Chicagoans are going to love.
Okay.
Chicagoans are going to love Angel Reese.
Of
Obviously, they
course.
already do. Um, the Sky have a guard named Kennedy Carter, goes by the nickname Hollywood. She is one of the most skilled offensive guard WNBA players I've ever seen. She can beat basically anybody off the dribble. She's super talented off the dribble and getting to the hoop. They kind of took a low risk, high reward kind of flyer on her because she had been out of the league for a couple of years. But she is super talented and she has highlight real potential. And the way people were reacting to her play in the preseason games, I think Chicagoans are really going to embrace her. They're going to love. We already love Dana Evans. That's a gimme. She's from Gary. She's a very easy player to root for. They're going to love Cardoso. Diamond DeShields from the championship team in 2021 is back. It's just a very easy team to root for. So I think watch for those names. I think people are going to be talking about them.
All right. Well, we will definitely keep an eye on those. And like I said, we'll definitely be talking about them. And, Eric, we would love to have you back on again at some point as this season goes along, because this was really good. I mean, you were really informative on how the Sky are doing, how the league is looking, and we really appreciate you coming on.
I really appreciate you having me. Thank you so much. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to talk about the WNBA. I always love that. So yeah, I look forward to next time.
I
All right,
appreciate
man.
it.
Well, take care.
All right, see you guys.
See you, Eric.
Thanks, Eric.
That was Eric Nemchock of Swish Appeal, my good friend who I grew up with here in Elmhurst. That was pretty great, wasn't it?
Yeah, that was awesome. It was funny while I was talking, I when I lived in Philadelphia, um, Dawn Staley, who won the national championship with South Carolina, she was the head coach of Temple University's women's basketball team. And I remember I was like a big fan because she's like, you could see why. She's, very charismatic, hard nosed, and so it was a fan favorite in Philadelphia. And I was just looking, and she was coaching while she was playing. Like almost the entire every season she was a coach of Temple. She was a WNBA All-Star. Like
That
that's
is
wild.
really impressive.
Yeah, that's wild to think about that she was just going and playing and then coaching. And during her off period. Like that's crazy.
Yeah, that I mean, like the player coach, player manager has been like long extinct for decades now. I mean, almost a century now. So that is something.
Yeah, it's crazy to think. I didn't even think about it, because WNBA wasn't on TV and she didn't play in Philadelphia, which they didn't have a team while I was there. So, I just knew her from women's uh Olympics and from Temple, which was right by where I
Right.
lived. Um, so should we talk Bears?
Yes. Caleb Williams, Bears, rookies, Bear Claw.
The Bear man has to feel a little bummed out that everyone's given the credit to Caleb Williams. He's like, I've been doing this for decades.
I know. But you know what? I am sure that Bearman is going to be appreciative of it if Caleb Williams goes out and throws for 4,000 yards and 30, 40 touchdown passes.
Yeah. So, the facts here is there was a 2-day rookie minicamp for the Chicago Bears, and it was the first time you got to see Caleb Williams in a Bears uniform wearing the orange number 18 jersey. You got to see Roma Dunze, and all the other rookies come in, and it was that a neat experience. You got to see that cool connection between Rome and Caleb, and so it makes you excited. But the thing that I was excited most about is I was listening to the or comments from the Bears quarterbacks coach, where he talked about how Caleb came in already digested part of the playbook and was texting him like late at night, 11 o'clock, 11:30 at night, with questions about plays. It's like, well, wouldn't and not just about quarterback play, but like, wouldn't the block scheme be this on this play, and just detailed questions about how the play worked, and not just the routes, not just where his reads are, but the blocking schemes and everything about the play. And like, that attention to detail is what separates quarterbacks in this the NFL.
That I know we can say like in a cliche way, oh yeah, he's dedicated 100%, blah, blah, blah. But I don't think that's nothing. And you heard the quote about him being a leader, right? Saying, hey, my ears are open, my mouth is shut. I'm going to listen to these guys. It almost feels like you can sense there's going to be this natural progression of him learning and also being a leader on the team as the quarterback. Like he's going to rally these guys around him, but he's all ears on what the veterans have to say and what they do. And I mean, that's exactly the type of combination that you want. Listen, I got to tell you, is any question I had about Caleb Williams's character and even listening to some of the national media and their stupid narratives that I even tried to buy into at some point when I still wasn't sure if we should go with this or Justin Fields in the regular season. I just it's infectious. His personality is infectious in so many ways, and you see a guy who once was rumored doesn't want to play in Chicago. He's taken this bear claw thing and like he's creating a culture with the Bears. And he hasn't even played a preseason game yet. It was the first days of rookie camp. It wasn't even the regular preseason camp.
Yeah.
I love what I see in this. And I don't know if it's going to translate into on-field success or not, but you're seeing things that you never saw before in a Bears rookie quarterback. Truly.
yeah, another quote about the rookie minicamp is whenever he didn't connect with one of his wide receivers, they said there was a couple errant throws and a couple drops. Is he said he would go up and have a discussion with the receiver, and they would run the play again until they were successful at it. And I just love that. There's a the just the lip service where it's, oh yeah, learning a lot, and I feel like I know the plays, and you see him there just striving for perfection. And like I said, is if the guy stays healthy and he continues this relentless pace for perfection of the plays, you're you're going to see good things. Because you look at quarterbacks like Aaron Rodgers and Tom Brady and Pat Mahomes, is they have the play caller that's sending plays in, but they have feedback about things both in the prep during the week and individually in there, where they have the freedom to audible, or on the sidelines say, hey, we should be running this, or kill a play. And that's but in order to do that, you have to show the coaching staff that you understand that everything well enough, and two, you have to have confidence in the playbook. And the fact that he's striving for this already is pretty incredible.
And I think that it is very easy to underestimate the complexity of an NFL playbook. I mean, this is not just a few pages of Madden routes. Hey, click X for a slant, or click Y for a fade, or backwards C for a flea flicker. I don't know if it was Dan Orlovsky, somebody the other day.
It was both Dan Orlovsky and Chase Daniel. Chase Daniel had a follow-up to it.
Yes.
So I know exactly what you're saying is, yeah, go ahead. But Dan Orlovsky and then Chase Daniel followed it up with a Sean Payton playbook.
Yeah, so go and look at that, and it'll give you a perspective. And this is on Twitter. So it gives you a perspective on how complicated and how big an NFL playbook is. And, when you have a coach like Sean Payton, I would say, one of the better coaches of our generation, obviously, he's had a lot of success. He's won a Super Bowl. So when you're looking at a playbook of a successful coach like Sean Payton, it really does put in perspective, just how complicated they are. And, now we have an offensive coordinator who is experienced. Shane Waldron comes from Pete Carroll and his system. And, this is a guy that has been around the block, unlike Lou Getsy, who, it was his first gig as an OC here in Chicago, coming over from Green Bay. But, this is the type of stuff that we don't see as fans per se, but because, we're not there behind the scenes, we're not in the meetings, we're not listening to the discussions between the coaches and the players, but we're, hearing these types of things being spoken to the press. And, this stuff matters, because the fact that Caleb Williams is on the record of doing this, it speaks a lot of volumes. It really does to me. And this is hopefully step one, a very big step into him, not only being talented on the field, but smart. Because look at the backup NFL quarterback. What do we know about the backup quarterback? They are some of the smartest people in the room, but they don't have all the physical tools like the arm or mobility of a starting quarterback. But they're some of the smartest people in the room because they know a playbook. If Caleb Williams is as smart with a playbook as there is, and you have his physical talent, then hopefully that translates into something great. Because look at Chase Daniel. He knows his shit. Like, you've heard him talk, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, people ask, why do the Bears keep bringing back Nathan Peterman for multiple years? There's a reason, because he knew the playbook. Is he was a veteran, so he could just come in. He didn't need a lot of reps because he knew the playbook already. So he could just step in with no reps. And, is he gonna air it out and win a shootout? No, but you can call all the plays in and not have to, if you bring in a quarterback that maybe green but has more talent, you've got to shrink that playbook because they don't know very much. And, there's inherently problems in that. And, springboarding off of what Alex said is when both Dan Orlovsky and Chase Daniel talked about it. I believe Dan Orlovsky had a Shanahan playbook. And so you saw both Shanahan and a Peyton playbook, and both of them are like
two big name coaches.
Yeah, they're both like thick wise, like 3 to 4 inches thick. It's like a an encyclopedia, like a big
reading a Harry Potter book.
It's like reading all the Harry Potter books. It's huge. And it's huge. And they were like, this first section is just the formations, and this section is just the cadences, because there's different cadences of how you call the snaps. And this one is just, the pre-snap, motions. And it's not just, oh, here's the plays. There's a big section about the things that you need to know before you learn the plays. And they install it in 3 portions: the rookie minicamp, the mandatory minicamp, and training camp. And they install it during them. And that's what you need to know going into it. And, it's one thing to be able to just go up there and regurgitate it. And we've learned from former Bears front office folks that Mitch Trubisky, part of the reason he got drafted over Patrick Mahomes was when you gave him a play, he could go up there and diagram it on a chalkboard or on a whiteboard, completely regurgitate everything, knew what you were talking about, and could spit it back out. And so, if you're like, oh, well, if he understands it here, and he's got, this talent with his arms and his legs, surely you can mesh those 2 things, and it's going to have great performance on the field. And it didn't. His understanding from being an academic exercise to being a real life exercise, like a real life in action, just didn't mesh. So we still have to see that with Caleb Williams, but the fact that it's not just on the whiteboard, it's he saw what they did in rookie minicamp and was asking questions, not just regurgitating, but like, hey, why is this? Why? And wanted to understand why on everything. And then was out there coaching the other rookies about the playbook that they all just learned at the same time because he already knew it better.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's funny you brought up Mitch Trubisky, because to me, that was an example of there's a guy that can know a playbook, but, he's a good athlete. Like, Trubisky's a good athlete, but we know he didn't have the strongest arm. And I think that it's fair to say that while he was also limited in some talent qualities, was also limited by the system itself, the Matt Nagy system. We saw how that all went down. And, one of the big hopes here going forward is you have a good system with Shane Waldron, with an experienced guy who had success with Pete Carroll over in Seattle, and a guy that can, maximize the weapons that he has. You have 3 legitimate wide receivers. You have a legitimate tight end. You have a good starting running back in DeAndre Swift. Your offensive line is at best fair, I'd say, but I think that another year of Darnell Wright and hopefully a healthy Tevin Jenkins, you can work with that. And, if you have a line that could hold up decently for both the run game and the pass protection, obviously you'll be able to do a lot more and succeed a lot more, because I still think even with Caleb Williams, and, feel free to interject here, but even with Caleb Williams as your quarterback and him being the main focal point and having three wide receivers that you're excited with, and DJ Moore, Keenan Allen, and Rome Odunze, you know, the running game I still think is going to be incredibly important. And I think that you're going to need to win in the trenches offensively here. And, I wonder what that's going to look like. And I still think that's going to be a very important, factor in the success of this offense.
Oh, absolutely. 100% is, regardless of how good Williams was in college and how much we are hearing that he's digesting the playbook, he's going to be a rookie quarterback, and they make mistakes. They, they need time to learn. The timing of the NFL is way different than college. Is that defense and that running game are going to be such big helps for him. The defense keeping them in games where you're not having to lean on him and force him to put up 30 plus points a game to win. And that running game is to keep him out of third and long, because those are the downs where you make the biggest mistakes, because that's where the pass rush is coming from. I take that back. Patrick Mahomes is like an anomaly, but almost every quarterback, regardless of whether they're in the Hall of Fame, won Super Bowls, is when it's third and long and the pressure is on, the pressure's coming at them, their stats are worse. It's just almost universal. And that's when you make mistakes, and that's what you want to try to keep out of. So if you can get a running game where on first actually picking up positive yards, and you're setting yourself up at 2nd and 6 or 3rd and 4, 3rd and 3, those are downs where the defense has to be honest. They can't just pin their ears back and try to come after you, and because they could still run the ball. They could still do all kinds, like the whole playbook is open. And that's going to be a huge boost for Caleb Williams if they're able to establish the running game. And I think part of the reason that they didn't trade Khalil Herbert is because I think they really want to have a healthy running game, and not, one running back gets dinged up, and you don't want your whole running game to be set back.
Yeah, for sure. It is going to be pretty important though for DeAndre Swift to be healthy this year. That's for sure.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Is he paramount to the success? Maybe not as much as some of the other guys, but having a healthy DeAndre Swift, a productive DeAndre Swift, is going to be a huge asset. I was talking to somebody yesterday, and I was saying having these 3 wide receivers is great, but then you put in Cole Kmet, who's learned to grow into his body and use his body as a shield to make these catches. You add Gerald Everett, who is a very accomplished receiving tight end in this league. But I'm like, the X factor here is DeAndre Swift, because both in the running game and in the passing game, he's going to be super helpful and a really good release valve / safety net for Caleb Williams.
Yeah, and that's a nice thing that DeAndre Swift brings, is the ability to pass catch. I think that's good, especially with the rookie quarterback for Caleb Williams. But I think the number one asset for DeAndre Swift is, he might not be a power speedster, but he's shifty. He's really, really shifty. And I think that's going to do some goods for this offense.
Absolutely. But so we're a long way off. We've got mandatory minicamp coming up. I want to say in a few weeks. And then training camp opens in July. I think we actually might even open a little earlier, because the Bears have the Hall of Fame game
Right
So they get to start training camp earlier. I think, so we're going to have real football coming sooner rather than later.
And you know what? I think you and we need to get to Hallis Hall for one of those. I really think we do.
Oh, absolutely. So it's going to be an exciting time, and I'm trying to get friends together to see who wants to go to the Hall of Fame and see the Bears game and see Devin Hester and McMichael get inducted.
Yeah, and I'm not saying it's going to translate, but it is kind of funny. The last time we played in the Hall of Fame game, that's when we won the division in 2018.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
Hopefully,
vibes, right?
that would be really cool.
Yeah, it would be really cool. And the other question I have is, when are we going to learn about Hard Knocks? Like, that's got to be coming, right?
I want to say last year it was like right around June 1st is when they made the announcement.
Yeah, so it should be pretty soon.
Yeah, it's gonna be soon. Duh, duh, duh. Trying to look because they'll have to be at training camp. So, but I'm not seeing the actual date. But I'm almost willing to put money on the Bears are going to be the Hard Knocks team.
I do too. I do. I mean, like every sign points to it, and I feel like the NFL is going to send somebody to Hallis Hall, like sneak in, get in, and tie George McCaskey to his chair as they make the announcement, and you'll have Kevin Warren, and you'll have maybe Ryan Poles just for the heck of it. Hey, where's George? He couldn't make it today. He's in his office to his chair.
They've got a giant purple crayon in his mouth taped up.
Or they have a cardboard cutout of him at the press conference. Oh, he's right here. He's tired and not feeling well, so he's not going to speak today.
Uh, they're like, we got him occupied. What do you have him doing? We gave him a bunch of coloring book sheets with Grimace eating grapes and said, color everything that's purple.
Grimace eating grapes. Oh my God, that's hilarious. Grimace eating grapes. Color everything that's purple. Oh, that's amazing.
Oh God. But I mean, I think it's, I've been one of the people for the last however many years being like, man, I really don't want the Bears to have Hard Knocks. I really don't want the Bears to have Hard Knocks. And this year, I'm like, it'd be kind of cool to have Hard Knocks.
Yeah.
Things are different, and you're starting to hear bits and pieces come out where, at the end of the season, they knew they already wanted to move past Justin Fields and they wanted to go a different direction, and that that even before the combine and anything like that, they already started putting a plan into place, a game plan before they hired an offensive coordinator. They had a game plan in place of how they wanted to bring a rookie quarterback into the league and support him and help him with his growth. And that's awesome. That's all. I mean, do all plans work? No, but you're way more likely to succeed if you have a quality plan in place.
The more time goes on, the more I speculate that the plan was to go another direction under center longer than we might have thought. Because I do think that when Ryan Poles took over, he said, okay, here's a kid that's only 1 year in the NFL. I'm going to bring in my own coaches. We're going to talk to him. We're going to see where this goes. So I don't think his intention was to right away, oh, I'm getting my own quarterback when he came in, but I think 2022, you saw the flashes of greatness. I mean, obviously, rushed for all those yards. And, though the passing yard numbers weren't there, I still think that he looked better than the air than was given credit for. He was on a really bad team. But, I think 2023, he kind of just evolved, saying, like there's a certain type of quarterback that I want and a certain philosophy that I want. We're going to do our due diligence by giving Justin Fields an opportunity, but I what game sticks to me more than anything, that was more telling to me than anything. Do you remember that loss at home to the Vikings?
Yep.
Do you remember how they were facing the number one blitzing defense in the NFL? And we were questioning on that post game, why the hell aren't you rolling him out, getting him in motion? Why were you keeping him in the pocket? You weren't even running play action. You were just keeping him in the pocket. And to me, I felt like that game spoke a lot of volumes. They wanted Justin Fields to thrive in a certain situation, and he just didn't.
I mean,
I
there's a reason that both Justin Fields is gone and Luke Getsy's gone.
right.
Is Ryan Poles, who I don't know if you saw the pictures from this weekend, looks like he's dropped a ton of weight. He's looking slim and in shape. But I think he was very frustrated with a lot of aspects of things. And, is that to say that neither one will end up doing something productive in the NFL? I mean, both ended up getting a job elsewhere. But it's he had a vision and neither one was meeting the expectation that he had for his vision.
Yes, yes. And it was easy to see a vision with Luke Getsy because, like we've said on this show many times, I think Luke Getsy knows an offense very, very well. And we've seen how his offense can work on the script. But when you go off it and you're running a bunch of screens, you're not putting your mobile quarterback in motion when you're constantly having pressure on him. And you're not calling the right blocking schemes, like having Darnell Mooney try to block on a Fields run that ended up being a turnover on downs. That's the kind of stuff that's got to make Ryan Poles, want to slam his fist up in that luxury box.
Yeah, I mean, it's one thing to academically understand things. It's Luke Getsy's is Mitch Trubisky standing at the board, being able to regurgitate things and diagram things on a whiteboard, but actually having production on the field and the cadence of being able to play call. It's some of it's an art. Is the way that you call plays is you want to be in the system that you're in and call plays that your team knows and runs and is good at, but also keep the defense on their toes. Is the Bears historically have had offenses where they were very predictable and defenses knew what to do. I mean, even in the Super Bowl, against the Colts players were like, yeah, we knew what they were going to run.
Yep.
We knew it,
Mm-hmm.
and it's in there are teams in the NFL historically that you could just hand them the play that you're going to run and they're still going to do it. I mean, you look at some of those like 90s Cowboys teams, like, yeah, Emmitt Smith's going to run behind 5 bulldozers. I'm like, all right, well, what are you going to do? Like, you can't stop that. He's going to pick up, even if you stop him pretty good, he's still picking up 5 yards. And, like you can't, like they were just good enough where they could just do whatever they wanted. It didn't matter if you, if you were, keeping them on their toes. But most teams aren't good enough to. You have to be able to catch teams off guard and be able to counter what they're doing as a defense. And Luke Getsy just wasn't good at that.
Right. Exactly.
So I was, it looks like early June is when they typically announce Hard Knocks.
Few weeks.
So yeah, we're getting close, and they um
And I don't know if any of this is credible, but like I keep hearing rumblings online that it's been decided that it's going to be the Bears, but we'll see officially if that's true
yeah, I
soon.
mean, I don't think that they're still debating this. I think it's probably a foregone conclusion, and that they're just ironing out details, because you're like, oh, okay, we got to set up, make sure that we know
How
where you're
many
going to
purple
be.
crayons do we have to provide George?
Yeah, but you have to get all this in place and have your crews and know when the camp dates are, and all of that kind of stuff, and prep, and kind of, because it, with any documentary, you're not just going to randomly follow everybody. You kind of have a storyline that you want you know to learn. So you got to learn who are the camp characters that that you want to have more focus on. What are the angles that you're trying to do? So there's more than just, oh, hey, we got to make a decision. So I'm sure that they've already made a decision on who they're going to go, and now it's just the logistics.
Yep, for sure.
um yeah, so I'm looking. The Bears announced their off-season workout dates. Um, the mandatory, or the OTAs, are going to be 21st, 22nd, 23rd, May 28th, 29th, and 31st. Those are the OTAs. And then mandatory minicamp is June 4th through 6th. So the other one is voluntary. And then when does training camp start? Training camp 2024. I don't see dates, but that'll likely be July. Yeah, training camp, yeah, sometime mid-July. So, yeah, I mean, we're right around the corner from OTAs, and then June is that lull. Oh man, we've got a little taste of OTAs, and now we're champing at the bit to get into training camp.
Yep, exactly.
Um, what do you want to talk about next?
Uh, I think we should talk about it really quick. We talked about the misery briefly about the Bulls lottery, but the Blackhawks lottery, we didn't quite get the number one pick, but we got number two.
We're number two. We're number two.
We're
Yeah.
number two. We're
Uh,
number two.
I mean, when you look at it, they had the best odds of getting the number 4 pick. So the
Yep.
way, yeah, where they sat is you could fall 2 spots, and you could rise 10 spots. They didn't have enough room to rise 10 because they were only in second place. So they could go first, second, third, or fourth. Those are the 4 spots they could be in. And they had the best odds to get number 4, second best to get 3, then 2, then 1. And I think I think the lottery went in order of
It did.
the way that they were seated, which I'm sure the conspiracy theorists were, out with their tinfoil hats and magnifying glasses, looking for the clues.
Oh,
But
of course. They always are.
I watching it, my daughter was in her dance class, and I was waiting to pick her up, and I'm watching it on my phone, live streaming it, and they get to pick 4, and I'm like, don't be 4, don't be 4. It wasn't 4, and I'm like, don't be 3, don't be 3. And then they go to announce 1. I'm like, please be 1, please be 1. And it wasn't. And I was like, at least it's 2. And number 1 is, it's hilarious that they pretty much, the whole broadcast basically said, oh yeah, here's Macklin Celebrini. He's going to be the number 1 pick.
Yep.
But the Blackhawks have a couple ways that they can go. And they it's it'll be interesting to see how they sort of play this out. because the the two leading, the most predicted players are Demidov, the center winger, and from Russia, and Levshunov, the defenseman from Michigan State. Those seem to be the two leading candidates. So it'll be interesting to see how they go because, from what I hear, is Demidov could be the best offensive player coming out of this draft.
Mm-hmm.
And looking at him in the league he was playing in, this past season, he was a 2-point a game player.
Yeah.
60 points in 30 games. No matter what the competition is, that's still pretty impressive.
It is. And, I where the Blackhawks are, it is kind of easy to say, hey, draft necessity, so you can easily take any of the best defensemen in the draft. But I do feel like there's plenty of reason to argue that best player available would be the way to go as well,
It's a little hard in like the NHL or MLB is to draft for need, because they don't always come straight to your team.
Exactly. It's not the NFL.
It's not the NFL. It's not the NBA, where they're just coming right in and performing. But these top couple guys, they could, Macklin Celebrini is going to play for San Jose this coming season, just like Bedard did for the Blackhawks.
Mm-hmm.
But every year, there's not very many guys that just come right from the draft into the NHL. So typically they're going to go play elsewhere, whether that's college or overseas or in AHL or wherever, and until they're ready to play in the NHL. But I think Demidov is a guy that I don't know what his contract situation is in Russia. So that may be a complicating factor, but
definitely
Levshunov, he's good enough and big enough he could just play in the NHL next year. If he wants to. I don't know he may want to go back to college, but he could easily just go right to the NHL and play. Not too many other guys are going to be ready to do that. But, not only do they have the number 2 pick, they also have the 20th pick.
That they do. They still got a ton of draft capital going forward.
Yeah, they've got a ton of draft picks. So this year, they have 2, 20, 34, 54, and 62. So there's a lot of talent that they're going to be able to pick up. And, there's whoever they get at 20, they're going to get a really good player.
Yes.
It's not going to, we're all focusing on that number 2 pick, but that 20 pick is going to be a really good player. And
who's going to be our Roma Dunze?
Yeah. I'm hoping that Jerome McGinley's son kind of falls. That would be
yeah. Isn't that wild? His son is playing now. And, it's like, geez, I remember watching him play in the NHL for all those years, having a Hall of Fame career.
I'm old. This has stopped being like, oh man, this is crazy. Now I'm just like, man, I'm just waiting for somebody's grandkid to get drafted. I'm like, I watched this guy play and now his grandson's in the league.
Well, yeah.
Carl Yastrzemski's grandson is playing now.
That he is.
But yeah, so it's I have no idea what way they're going to go. I don't think we have a handle on Kyle from Chicago's his draft philosophies yet. So, but they've got so many good draft picks that they could easily package something together and move up if they wanted to.
Yeah, absolutely. They could. And, I think, with what we've seen from Kyle Davidson, the one trait that I've noticed a lot is speed. I think we've seen a lot of that in his draft. And then, because Oliver Moore and Frank Nazar. So we'll see how he kind of keeps drafting. This is going to be, obviously this class isn't as celebrated as last year's class, but you had multiple generational type talents at the top because we all know that if Connor Bedard wasn't part of last year's draft, then everyone would be talking about oh, what's his nuts that Columbus drafted? Uh
Oh, the guy
Fantilli,
from
Adam Fantilli.
Fantilli. Yeah.
Yeah.
Fantilli was that was a really good consolation prize. And this draft is playing out a little bit like last year. Is you have a clear cut number one guy, and then how is the draft going to play out afterwards? And there's some really good guys that you look at, in these names over the next handful of picks that nobody's going to bat an eye at. I mean, who knows how they work out, but in the draft, the guy from Medicine Hat, Lindstrom, if you picked him at number 2, I don't think anybody's going to bat an eye. Like there's a number of guys you could draft at number 2 that people are going to be like, that was a good pick. So I think it's more of a preference at this point, and how you see them lining up, and who knows, is maybe the way the contract situations are lining up with some of these players, it might be a good idea to have somebody that won't come for a year or two,
Sure.
to try to stagger some of these contracts,
That's true.
because that's not an issue right now, but that is going to be an issue coming in the next couple of years.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. That is something to think about.
Yeah, I mean, I hear like sports radio talking about, oh, the Blackhawks should go and get every big name player they can. I'm like, that's good, that's fine and good this year or next year, but when Connor Bedard's contract is due and you're going to be paying him, $12+ million a year, suddenly then you go back to, all right, now we've got to, how are we going to fit some of these contracts into play?
Right. Yeah. I mean, that's because really at the end of the day, the vision for Kyle Davidson is the long one. That's what he's trying to build towards.
And they just re-signed Lucas Reichel to a second contract, which was, I think, 2 years,
Yes.
like a little over $1 million a year. And I think that worked out really well for the Blackhawks. Is that's a low cost, high reward potential, because if he bounces back and plays like we expected him to play this year, then you got yourself a steal.
Yes.
And if he turns out to be, a turd sandwich, like,
You're
that's
not
not that
committing much to him.
you haven't committed much to him. And if you wanted to, that's easy. That's an easy contract to walk away from.
Yes.
So, Kyle from Chicago's strategy so far have worked out nicely.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I was perfectly fine with that Reichel extension. And hey, he scored a couple of goals in the playoffs for the Ice Hogs, so that's nice.
Yeah. And then the NBA had their draft lottery today, and the Bulls wound up exactly where they were seated at number 11. And Atlanta, like you said earlier, moved all the way up from, I think, 10th to 1st. So, I mean, this is not an awesome draft class. It's not like there's somebody that's a generational talent in here. It's not like last year, where you have the future of the league coming into the draft. This is there's any number of guys that could go number 1 overall, and I don't think anybody's clamoring over one guy. So this could be a year where you were fine to not win the draft lottery.
Right.
I don't want to talk too much about Bulls because I want to get to baseball
Ugh.
here.
Yeah, me too.
the the Cubs bullpen situation is beyond the point where you need to do something to address it.
You had one of your few remaining reliable relievers go down in Tony Almonte. And that's a big blow because he was pitching really, really well. And he had kind of entered that circle of trust in recent weeks. So here's where I see it now. Kyle Hendricks made a start today, and he got 15 outs. That's what you could ask for him. Hopefully Tyone is okay. So we saw Hayden Wesneski make some starts and look really good. We also saw him come out of the bullpen and look really good. And we like to look at Ben Brown as a potential starter, but I think Wesneski and Brown, you need those guys in the bullpen. Like, there's just no other way around it right now.
Yeah, I mean, if I'm not going to tell Ben Brown, hey, long term, you're not a starting guy. But for right now, I that's where you need him. Is you've got a lot of starters, and other than the clunker that Steele just threw, your starters have, and the clunkers that Kyle Hendricks was throwing earlier in the season before his injury stint. Like, for the most part, your starters have been pretty damn awesome this year. It's the bullpen that stinks. So now that you're starting to get healthier with your starting rotation, some of these guys that you had filling in admirably at your starting rotation, you've got to shift them to the bullpen to get reliable arms in there, because we all shit on David Ross last year because he only, the way he managed the bullpen, but man, at least he had a couple of guys he could trust last year. Who that's was designated to be the bullpen for the start of the season do you trust that's currently playing?
Mark Leiter Jr.
Yeah, that's about it. Is Quas was miserable, and you just brought him back, over the Friday
For a day.
Oh, did he go back down?
Yeah, because they brought Kyle Hendricks back today.
Okay. So yeah, Quas was back up. Neris hasn't been looking good. Alzolay has been miserable.
Yeah.
And so,
well, Neris is insane. He puts 2 honor loads the bases literally every time out, and yet he somehow gets out of it. He did it again today. He loaded the bases. He was 1 ball away of walking in the winning run. He also got a very, very big play from Nico Horner. Did you see the diving stop he made?
Yeah.
I mean, but here's the thing. He has played with fire every single time out, and he's gotten away with it every single time. It's insane how he's gotten away with it every single time, but that's not going to happen going forward. It's going to blow up in his face at some point.
Yeah. I mean, the law of averages, though, say that it's the absolute shit show that's Albert Alzolay. I feel like the Neris hanging on by a thread is sort of evening that out a little bit.
Yeah. And it's frustrating because Hector Neris has a really good splitter, and when he's able to execute it, it's pretty nasty. But you can't have 3 guys on every single time.
Oh yeah, you can't. And it's you watch him pitch and you're just like please just make this easier. Just give me a 1-2-3 inning. And we're just shy of a quarter of the way through the season, and we have a bullpen guy that has 4 decisions. Like, why do we have that? Like, that there should be not that many decisions, especially with we have what, four starting pitchers with under 2 ERAs. Like, why do we have so many bullpen decisions? Like, it's infuriating.
Yeah. I mean, everything is just made so complicated with where the roster is right now. Um, how do we not get everybody hurt?
That's another question.
I mean, it's insane. Two guys come back and then two guys leave.
You know, I'm hoping the injury to Swanson is a blessing in disguise. He was really struggling, and you hope that
It's that reset.
it's a reset. It's hard to reset with a single day off. Is you know, I'm hoping that formula worked for Kyle Hendricks as he came back from just the worst stint of his career, goes out for a little bit, makes a rehab start, comes back and pitches a pretty decent game here.
Well, I think with Swanson is looking at the bright side to kind of expand upon your point. He gets the reset, and at least with Swanson, you have Nico Horner taking over his spot, and you can say, okay, we got a pretty good thing with Nico Horner. So this, for a short term, you can live with it, is what I'm trying to get at.
Yeah.
So let Swanson get healthy, because it sounded like he got hurt in the Astros series, and you can tell offensively and defensively with some of the footwork that didn't look quite right. Like, you could tell something was off.
Yeah, I think everybody talked about it is Coomer had mentioned it a few times that, it seemed like he's not fully healthy. And, nobody really talked about it from the club level, but peripherally, the writers and the announcers and like they were all just like, something doesn't seem right. And Coomer was the one that was like, I wonder if whatever we're seeing that looks like it's bothering him is part of the reason that he's not getting results at the plate. And sure enough, that they they put him on the IL, and we'll see how he looks when he comes back.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, this the Cubs have not looked pretty lately, but they're getting wins.
It's we've spent this whole time weathering a storm, it feels like.
Yeah.
And this storm is about to get a hell lot crazier.
Yeah,
because
it
you have to
hasn't been
play
easy.
Atlanta.
I mean, it hasn't been easy. You've got the Brewers, who are your first place team. The Padres, who are really coming on. And you have the Pirates, who, they're bringing in some of their best young players up. And now you've got Atlanta. At least Atlanta's on a little bit of a slump.
Didn't they beat up the Mets though?
Yeah, but I mean, I think that's that's one of those divisional type things. But I mean, Atlanta was so far in front in first place, and they're several games behind the Phillies for that division. They've really come back down to earth. I mean, they're in a really good team. They're going to have the Cubs are going to have their work cut out for them, but I think there's a lot more optimism playing them now than last year.
How are we going to cobble together those last 9, 10, 12 outs against that team?
That's the problem.
Right. I mean, I think Ben Brown and Hayden Wesneski better be ready. That's all I'm going to say.
If they if you get your starting rotation set and you bring those two guys in to the bullpen, I think that could really settle some things down. And just this team is a half game out of first place, and they're well set as far as the wild card goes, which it's still early in the season, but we are about a quarter of the way through the season. So it's not nothing where their standing is. But just imagine where they would be if even half of those blown saves got converted.
Right. I mean, I think you can realistically say you'd feel a lot better had we converted maybe 2 or 3 of them.
Yeah.
It's because you can bring up the stat Cubs games where a lead was blown. It's like, okay, if you're looking at like a game where the bullpen had to come in the 6th inning and you're up 3-2 and the other team scored, it's like, well, I think you need to narrow it down more because to me, blowing like a 2-run lead in the 6th inning with your bullpen coming in is very different than blowing a 9th inning lead when you're just either a few mere strikes or outs away from victory. I think there's a big difference there. And you
Or
can look
blowing
at
an 8-run lead.
well, yeah, that's that too. That loss is going to be just the bane of my existence for a long time. And anyway, but you get what I'm saying, right? And you can identify certain losses where you're like, okay, this one was whatever, but this one hurts, like like yesterday's game, you lost 9-10, and that was just kind of a stupid, weird game, like, whatever. But like, say the game when you were 1 out away against Arizona and you gave up a home run and then you lost in extras, that's a gut punch. Or the game I was at against the Marlins when you blow against that god awful Marlins team, that's a gut punch that you can't afford to lose. But yeah, I think if you had 2 or 3 more wins, you'd feel a bit better. But it is also pretty amazing the Cubs are where they are. How many guys have been on the IL? Suzuki, Bellinger, Swanson, Tyone, Steele, Hendricks, Smiley, Almonte, Julian Merriweather.
Yeah. And we're like 40 games in the season.
It's insane. And I thought Morel was for sure going to be going on the IL yesterday. You saw that slide with his knee.
Yeah.
But he was okay and he hit a home run today.
I do want to talk about Paul Skeens that pitched yesterday for the Pirates.
Okay.
That dude he just fires missiles out of his arm. like his changeup was like 94 miles an hour.
Stuff is insane. The stuff is really insane. I do have to give the Cubs credit though. They didn't look completely helpless against him.
No. I mean, the thing is, major league players can hit fastballs.
Yes.
They can hit fast. It's what sort of spin and movement can you get on that fastball? And I think Paul Skeens has just a complete rocket arm, but he's got to work on a few things before he gets to be an elite guy. I mean, he got 7 strikeouts in 4 innings.
Yeah, that's not nothing.
But they were able to take advantage. It wasn't like he just was mowing people down. Like,
they got their walks. They were patient.
Yeah. And Paul Skeens' girlfriend Livy Dunn was there.
Yes. Yeah, we all know.
We all know. But yeah, I mean, it sucks that we lost that Padres series, but honestly, is you win the Pirates series, tough fought series, but you win that series, and that's the important one because you got to win those division games.
Yep.
And we've got another one coming up with the Pirates, and then the Cardinals and the Brewers later in the month.
Or in Milwaukee.
and then we end the month with the Reds. So it's we've got a lot of division games coming up that are going to either buoy us in this division or sink us in this division.
Yeah.
And I know you're not going to be sunk come June 1st, but you also
you want to just stay right within there.
Yeah, you either want to build on a good lead or stay within striking distance.
Yep.
Other side of town. Yeah,
They've played better.
They have played better. Are they playing well? No, I wouldn't say it. I wouldn't go that far, but they're they played a good series against the Guardians.
Mm-hmm.
And the Rays came back and took one, or took a series from them, but you are playing better. The bats are starting to come alive a little bit.
Starting pitching outside of like Mike Soroka has been pretty solid. I mean, you got more good starts from Garrett Crochet. Eric Fetty has looked really, really good. And Eric Fetty can garner you something nice at the trade deadline. So that's a big bonus.
Well, that's the story now. Is the rumors are that the White Sox are just gonna have a fire sale.
And I mean, why wouldn't they?
I mean, I hesitate to say the word fire sale. Is it, if you realize, hey, we're really bad, I'm fine trimming fat and moving on from prospects or young players where you're like, we think they're good, but their timeline doesn't match up with our timeline. Because, if you got a young player that's on your roster, like an Eloy, you're like, okay, well, by the time we're ready to be good, he's going to be on the older side.
Get value while you can for him, because the health is just never there.
I mean, even if the health was there, you look at him and he's going to be 28 this year. So let's say they're 3-year rebuild. He's in his 30s then. You've got an often injured slugger that's in his 30s. Like, okay, are we ready to pay him a shit ton of money on a second or another contract? Like, that doesn't seem like a good use of your resources. So might as well trade him for lottery tickets and try to rebuild that way. Like, I'm all for that, but I think you've got to be really surgical with how you trim this roster, because if there's somebody that has more value now to your team, or more value to your team than whatever you're going to get in return, like, you can't do the thing where you're stripping it down to the studs. I think you have to be a little more surgical, because you can't keep going through rebuilds. The fan base doesn't deserve it. And how many rebuilds have they had over the past decade? 3?
If you count the Rick Hahn, we're going to sign Melky Cabrera and Todd Frazier and Adam Eaton as a rebuild, then yeah, 3.
It's, that's a tough pill to swallow in not that long of a time.
Right. It's like a massive horse pill.
Yeah. So, I mean, if you want to trade some people, like I mean, Clevenger sucks, but
nobody wants him.
But hypothetically, let's say though, Clevenger for the next month and a half is pitching really well, or at least very solid. Somebody's gonna trade for him.
Yeah, you think?
I think the White Sox have taken the heat. I think it's been long enough and enough heat has been taken off where I think somebody would take him for a half season. If he had a 3-year deal and you were trying to sign him or trade for him for the rest of that deal, I don't think not everybody would be palatable of that. But for the remainder of one season, I think somebody would.
I'm just saying, nobody signed him this offseason. The Sox signed him several weeks in, or maybe it was like a week or two into the regular season. So I don't know.
We'll see. I mean, I don't suspect he's going to pitch well enough to make this a actual conversation, um, but that's the kind of moves you're going to make. Is they're gonna try to trade like anybody
Tommy
that's
Pham gone, Eric Fetty gone, those
yeah.
relievers gone.
Mm-hmm. Eloy they're gonna attempt to move him.
Yeah.
Um,
If he's healthy, I don't know what kind of return you're going to get, but I think someone will take him.
I think so. I think so. Um, is Andrew Vaughn is going to be an interesting one. I think they might try to move him.
They might try. I just right now, unless he goes on a tear, which he might, but uh
You're selling low.
right now he does. Yeah, you're selling for pennies on the dollar right now.
I mean, honestly, you know who could be a your best trade piece? Gavin Sheets.
You wouldn't think Eric Fetty would be starting
May,
pitcher?
yeah, maybe. I was thinking more of the bats.
Okay, okay.
But Gavin Sheets has had a pretty nice season.
I would probably say Tommy Pham first, but
Pham just because he is a veteran.
he's a proven commodity, and um, the thing with Gavin Sheets is you're trading for a bat only. You're getting, which I'm not saying there wouldn't be demand for that, but yeah, I mean it's just at least with Tommy Pham, you're getting a multi-positional guy.
You're also getting a nut job.
Yeah, well that too. That too.
He is not known for being a
A chill dude.
chill kind of guy.
Don't get into a fantasy league with him.
Definitely don't get into a fantasy league with him. But yeah, I mean, Fetty, I think is good as gone. I don't think anybody's trading for Soroka.
Oh no, he's been awful.
Do you try to trade Crochet?
I think he's part of their future plans. I really do.
I think he should be, but does that mean that's what Jerry is thinking?
I mean, you have control over him, right? I mean, well, he didn't come in the league in 2020. So you are going to have to pay him eventually, but you're not going to have anybody on the books. I personally don't think he gets traded. That's my guess.
Let me see his arbitration. Garrett Crochet. Is I think he's only got one more year of arbitration eligibility.
Yeah, you might be right. Yeah, because he did come up in 2020. Man, it's been that long already. It feels like it hasn't because he hasn't pitched much.
Yeah, I mean, doesn't always matter.
Yeah.
I mean, it's so it's going to be interesting to see how they handle that because I like you said, is the White Sox, are they playing good? No. Are they playing respectable? Yeah.
Over the past week or so, yeah. Before that, no, but quite the opposite of. I mean, a few days ago, they posted a chart where the White Sox were 30th of 30 in like every relevant stat known to man, like OBP, batting average, runs, like everything that matters. They were like dead last in. I don't
Okay.
know if you saw that.
So Garrett Crochet is an unrestricted free agent in the 2027 season. So he's got 2 more seasons of arbitration.
So
But
there's
he's
some time. It's not a ton, but there's some.
no, but I mean, I don't think those are going to be cheap arbitration years either.
No, no, they're not.
Yeah. So uh, he's only 25 years old. I don't know. I would think it would be stupid if the White Sox traded him, but Jerry's gonna Jerry.
True.
And I'm sorry, I missed what you said just a second ago. I was busy staring at Spot Track.
Oh, about the stats.
Yeah.
Well, somebody posted a stat block. This was a few days ago before the Sox kind of went on their little win streak. So I don't know if it's exactly the same now, but this might have been like Wednesday or something. It was like a week or so ago, but I think it was Jay Kuda posted like the White Sox as a team are like dead last, 30th of 30 in like every notable statistic.
Oh,
Like OBP and average and runs, like like dead last and everything.
yeah. I talked about this last week. Is the White Sox threw out a starting lineup. All 9 players had an under 600 OPS.
Ugh.
And if you looked the previous season of all players that with the minimum at bat requirement, there was only I think 3 players that finished under 600 OPS for the whole season,
Mm.
and the White Sox fielded 9 of them in one game.
At least now you have Tommy Pham to be like, hey, we have this bat. Gavin Sheets has been okay, so when he's playing, so I don't know, where would this team be without Tommy Pham? They'd still probably be chasing the spiders.
Um, so Gary had sent me this stat that the White Sox, no White Sox player has an OPS higher than the Dodgers team average OPS.
Good gravy.
And to be fair, Mookie Betts and Shohei Ohtani buoy that a lot. Both guys have they're both both at 1100 OPSs.
It's ridiculous.
But yeah, as a team that they're absolutely just crushing the baseball, and the White Sox is even their best player is like an average play is like slightly playing above average. I mean, Tommy Pham's I think has the highest OPS and it's like 770 or something.
Yeah, something like that.
So it is a brutal situation there, and that the Jerry's put them in and is handpicked. I mean, we were told that they hired this GM because then they didn't have to wait so long and you could get a jump start on the season and really get things going. Imagine how bad things would be if they took their time and hired a GM based on merit and after a lengthy interview process where you got to interview actual other teams coaches or GMs.
We owe it to our fans to turn this around quickly, and we can't do that without somebody in the organization. Now, let me tell you how much I like David Eckstein. We're not going to be in the Ohtani race.
Why would we want a guy that has a 1200 OPS?
When David Eckstein, he could do that.
Oh my God. They went, yeah, we're not gonna be in on the best player in baseball. Like, why would we want to do that? That's stupid.
You ain't kidding.
Yeah. Like, Shohei Ohtani is absolutely ridiculous this season. He's batting 352 with 11 home runs and an 1100 OPS.
That's pretty good, right?
352 batting average, 423 on base percentage, 667 slugging.
Seems pretty good, right?
I mean, yeah. I mean, he's on pace.
That's not bad, you know.
He's on pace for like 46 home runs. Oh, sorry. Yeah, he's on pace for like 60 or 46 home runs and like 110 RBIs.
Hmm.
And this is after he started off a little bit slow. So
Yeah, and slow for him is still better than like 80% of the league.
fair enough. Yeah, he's on ESPN. I couldn't get Fangraphs to load, but on ESPN he's already at a 2.6 WAR.
Wow. Wow. It's not even Memorial Day.
Yeah. We're he's like 38 games into the season. He's got a 2.6 WAR.
Sheesh.
Ridiculous. Was there anything else you wanted to talk about?
Nope, I think I said my piece. This was a really, really good show tonight.
Yeah, it was awesome. So that's going to do it for this episode of Bill Swerski Sports Talk Chicago. I want to thank everybody so much for listening. Please hit subscribe however you listen to podcasts, whether it's iTunes, Stitcher, YouTube, Google Play, Spotify, etc. Share this podcast with your friends. That's how we grow the show. Follow us on social media at Swerski Sports, Facebook.com/Swerski Sports, SwerskiSports.com, or ShyFanPat2 for Alex on Twitter, or AlexanderJPatCreative.com for all the cool stuff that Alex does. And again, thank you guys so much for listening. Until next time, bear down.
Cubs win! What a lucky break! The good Lord wants the Cubs to win!
We thank Ditka and God for all they have provided.
Cubs win! Cubs win! Cubs win!
Oh, I don't want her. You can have her. She's a Packer fan. She can't fit in my van.
And she looks like number New Yorkers. Smoking crack is not legal on the plains.
Bears 31 to -7.
The Bears. Oh, when the Bears go bearing down.